The movie begins with Jessica, a recently widowed woman, putting her belongings into a cargo trailer for a road trip. When she is finished with her preparations, she opens a map app on her phone, revealing that she is leaving for a 4-day trip out of town to begin a new life. Her travel out of town appears to be going well, and she enjoys the drive for a bit until arriving on the highway in the middle of the woods. She eventually finds herself driving along a quiet road, and with a black automobile in front of her behaving strangely. The black automobile is traveling too slowly, and when she tries to overtake it, it accelerates. Jessica does not want to wait any longer, so she accelerates and swerves to the other lane. However, the car matches her speed, preventing her from returning to the right lane. To make matters worse, a large vehicle appears to be heading towards her, but the black car refuses to slow down. Fortunately, she manages to overtake the car only seconds before the truck smashes her. But in a matter of seconds, the black car accelerates to catch up to her and begins honking at her. They then separate ways at a junction, and she stops to regain her breath after the adrenaline surge. That night, she's filling up at a gas station while on the phone with her father. Based on the phone call, it appears that she is not on good terms with her mother, despite her father's request for reconciliation. During the call, she becomes distracted when she notices the black car from earlier drives up to the gas station before hurriedly leaving. After that, she decides to get some rest and spend the night at a little motel in town. She receives a call from her mother while she is there, but she declines to answer. Before going to bed, she looks at pictures of herself and her late husband and recalls the pleasant times they shared. She pours out a few tears as she is overcome with sadness before deciding to sleep. As she prepares to leave in the morning, a shady-looking guy with an arm cast approaches her. Jessica is astonished when he announces himself as the driver of the black automobile. He uncomfortably apologizes for what happened the other day, explaining that he was texting while driving and didn't pay attention to what was going on. He then asks her other questions, such as whether she lives nearby and where she's going, which worries Jessica, so she excuses herself and continues on her journey. She eventually leaves town and drives on a highway through the forest. But after a while of driving, she notices the black automobile parked in the middle of the road, with the shady man looking lost. Jessica appears uneasy and immediately locks her car. She then rolls down her window and lets the guy explain his situation, during which he claims that his car engine has suddenly died. He's asking her to give him a ride to the nearest gas station. Worried about her safety, Jessica advises that she go to the petrol station and send a mechanic to help him. However, the guy refuses and insists that she come out and help him, so she drives away out of suspicion. She doesn't go to another petrol station until much later that evening. While taking a break, her mother calls again, and Jessica eventually answers. The mother seems disappointed that Jessica chose to leave town without telling her family, but Jessica is acting on her decision to move on from her husband. She is shocked to see the same dreadful vehicle entering the rest area and then pulling up to the parking lot. Jessica realizes she's being followed by this guy, so she feels terrified and runs back to her car. The stranger approaches her window as expected, but before he can say anything, she starts to drive away. However, on her way out, a white van swoops in and blocks her path, allowing the stalker to approach her again, claiming that he is only here to use the restroom and that Jess is overreacting. Jessica chooses to ignore him and drive away as soon as a white van is out of the way. She starts driving as fast as she can because she can see the black car in her rearview mirror. At this moment, she decides to contact 911 to report that she is being followed. but she becomes upset when the operator asks her where she is, which she does not know exactly. She panics even more as the black car accelerates, but it quickly passes her and vanishes into the night, revealing that it was not the shady stranger's vehicle after all. Jessica then informs 911 that the report is a false alarm, and she begins to calm down. But soon after that, she loses control of her car and crashes at the side of the road. When she walks outside to check, she finds that one of her cargo trailer tires has exploded. Conveniently, the black car begins heading towards her, triggering her fight or flight response. She immediately unhooks the cargo trailer from her car and hops inside, but she fails to start it on time. This time, the shady stranger decides he's had enough of pretending to be a nice guy and immediately shatters her window. Jessica fights him for a brief while, but he is stronger and quickly injects her with a tranquilizer. When she wakes up the next day, she finds herself in an unusual room with barred windows and a fenced lawn. She looks through the locked door but finds nothing that can help her. She suddenly hears footsteps outside, which are undoubtedly those of the shady guy. He simply looks at her smugly and tells her to keep quiet when she begs him to let her go. The man doesn't come check on her until later that night, when he shines his flashlight inside the pitch-black room and walks up to her with a lewd smile. She yet again pleads for his mercy and offers him money in exchange for her freedom. The man doesn't budge and creepily replies that she's not the first person to say that to him, clarifying that he's a serial killer. Like the freak he is, he asks her to take her clothes off, so she tries to trick him by saying that she needs to use the bathroom. But as soon as she rushes towards the entrance, he knocks her to the ground. He then drags her to the middle of the room and kneels on top of her, caressing her face. Next, he takes out her iPad and shows her a video of her joyful moments with her husband. He then stares at the wedding ring she wears on a necklace and asks if her husband divorced her. Despite her initial reluctance to speak, she eventually agrees that her husband committed suicide. But the serial murderer is not satisfied. He forces her to reveal that her husband shot himself and that she discovered his body. When she wakes up in the morning, she immediately attempts to open the door, but it doesn't budge. When she looks through the keyhole, she notices that the key is stuck to the opposite side of the door. Therefore, she looks around the room until she discovers a nail stuck to a beam and rips it out with all her strength. After that, she flattens her jacket and slides it outside the door, pushing the key out with the nail. Once the key falls, she slides it inside the room and uses it to escape. Just then, the serial murderer returns home from grocery shopping, forcing her to hide inside the closet as he enters the room. She nervously watches him through the door gap, attempting to remain silent while the serial killer takes a phone call from his family. He appears to be chatting with his little daughter, politely urging her to say hello to Mommy and to inform Mommy that his business trip is going longer than expected, so he'll be home in a few days. He then hangs up the phone and goes downstairs to check the basement. Jessica sees this as an opportunity, and she rushes out of the house and into the woods as quickly as she can. She's immediately chased by the serial killer, who finds out that she has escaped. Jessica keeps running until she slips and realizes that a twig has punctured her foot, forcing her to painfully remove it. Her scream draws the killer's attention. However, this does not stop her, as she limps on till she has no other choice but to step into the river as the killer approaches her. Despite the risk of drowning, she decides to plunge into the river and let the stream carry her to the other side of the trees. The creek washes her over to the side, so she continues to go through the woods, using a stem to help her. However, she suddenly hears footsteps, leading her to hide and wait before hitting the man with the stem. As it turns out, the quick attack only catches one old hunter off guard. She instantly apologizes and begs for his help, claiming that someone is attempting to kill her and requesting to borrow his phone. Unfortunately, she smacked him earlier, so his phone is now shattered. Feeling terrible for the woman, the hunter leads her back to his car and allows her to borrow his wife's hunting boots before driving away together. He graciously allows her to eat his lunch sandwich throughout the journey while he attempts to calm her down. But then they come across a fallen tree, which blocks their path. Jessica freaks out and tries to move the tree, but it's clearly too heavy. As if on cue, the killer drives up to them, and the old hunter suggests Jessica to calm down. The man then tells the hunter that Jessica is his mentally disturbed sister who fled the house, confusing the hunter. At this point, the hunter begins to believe him and allows him to take her. The killer then attempts to catch Jessica, but the hunter becomes suspicious of his rough handling of her and raises his gun, compelling the killer to let her go. As Jessica flees into the woods, the hunter requests to borrow the killer's phone, believing that if Jessica is his sister, the police will most likely confirm his claim. But it won't be so easy. He brutally abuses the old hunter before shooting him with the hunting rifle to death. At the same moment, Jess begins running deep into the woods as the now armed killer looks for her. As night falls, Jessica eventually rests on a rock under the roaring storm. Unfortunately for her, the killer is nearby, shining his flashlight around looking for her. When she believes it is safe, she tries to leave, but the man is still present and shoots her in the leg. Jessica manages to slip past him, hiding under the bushes while he looks for her again. The killer then begins to terrify her, telling her that she has 2 hours to come out of the gunshot wound, or she will bleed to death. As a result, he proposes that she come out immediately and fight him while she still has the strength. To torment her even more, he lays down the gun and tells her she has 1 minute to try to get it. He continues to harass her, even referencing her late husband and labeling him a coward to incite her rage. The longer Jessica refuses to come out, the more furious he becomes, and he starts ranting and saying he's going to get her. Jessica decides not to reach for the rifle and instead waits for the killer to pick it up and go. She then emerges from hiding and continues to wander till she falls asleep under a tree due to tiredness. The next morning, she wakes up to find herself still in the middle of the forest. She then forces herself to continue moving across the challenging terrain until she hears the sound of a running car, owned by none other than the killer. He pulls out the dead hunter's body and drags it into a small hole he dug. As he prepares to bury the body, Jessica creeps up to his car and, fortunately, finds it unlocked. So she enters in and looks for anything that could possibly help her until she finds his phone. Unfortunately, when she finds it, the killer has finished burying the man, so she quickly rolls up to the back as he enters his car and starts driving. She gets a tire wrench to defend herself and begins calling 911, but she is unable to speak properly because she cannot make a sound. It doesn't take long for the killer to realize his phone is missing, so he looks for it and stops the car when he can't find it. Realizing there's only so much time before her position becomes unsafe, she decides to get out and starts thrashing him with the tire wrench. The man then begins driving like crazy while continuously attempting to stab her with his hunting knife until she smacks his arm and causes him to let go of the weapon. She then repeatedly chokes him with the tire wrench and stabs him in the wrist, forcing him to lose control of the steering wheel and crashing the car. Jessica climbs out of the wreckage, where she sees a helicopter pass while her vision blurs. After seeing the helicopter, she recovers her strength and walks till she reaches a clearing. Meanwhile, back at the wreckage, the killer is still alive. Jessica still has the killer's phone and decides to call the man's wife and tell her that her husband is not on a business trip and is instead a serial killer. When she notices the killer approaching, She puts the phone on speaker so she can tell the man that she has informed his wife. Jessica proceeds to tell the wife her whole name before stating that if she dies today, it will be because her husband murdered her. This, of course, enrages the killer, who abruptly ends the call after Jessica throws the phone at him. The killer's look is pure desperation, and because none of them has anything to lose, they end up in a vicious battle. He fights with a knife, but Jessica has a metal weapon to defend herself. She manages to land many hits with the wrench before the man stabs her in the limb and nearly kills her, but she fights back and bites the wound on his arm. And then, it's Jessica's turn to make the fatal move. She stabs him deep in the gut, pinning him down. When she is certain he has no more strength, she collapses on the ground from exhaustion. Her eyes flood with rage as she seems to die. The movie ends as the helicopter locates her and flies down to take her up. With that being said, this is it for today's video. Thanks for watching.